I'm going to show you how to mix guitars start to finish. I've got a session up here. This is the song Remarkably Human by Nick Johnston. And here's the section we're going to work on. We're just going to focus on the bridge here, which has acoustics, rhythm electrics, and then also a lead. So here's what it sounds like in the final mix. So what I'm going to do is just remove all of the processing that I had on all those guitars in the mix, and then I'm just going to go through and mix it again in front of you in real time. So here's what it sounds like in contrast with all of my plugins removed. Definitely lacking some life and some energy. So this is a great song to demonstrate on because it has these different types of guitars: acoustics, electrics, leads. So we're going to start with the acoustics and then the rhythms. That lays the foundation of the guitar sound, kind of fills up the whole spectrum, and then we have the lead coming through on top. So here are the acoustics. So the first thing I'm going to do is try and find a balance between these two mics. So there's a large diaphragm, a U87 mic, and then a small diaphragm mic. So in this case, let's just bring them all down. Let's turn up the bus a bit. And by the way, all of these mics are going through to a bus here. So you see I've got the left and then the right. So each one has two mics. The left is obviously panned 100% left, the right 100% right, into the acoustic bus here. So let's turn up that bus just so we can hear it better, and then I'll just kind of play through and bring up the mics one by one. So I think that balance is pretty good between the two mics. And what I'm going for is for acoustics in a rock arrangement like this, I don't really want a ton of body and low end. What I want is that percussive top end sound, that little sizzle and sparkle from the acoustics. So that's why I'm choosing to lean on the small diaphragm a little more, which is typically going to sound a little brighter and more detailed. Let's just make sure we have essentially the same kind of level going into each side here. Cool. All right. Now the first thing I'm going to do on these acoustics is actually a multi-band compressor. And the reason for that is if I solo out the acoustics here, let me bypass this. It doesn't need a lot, but on the hard strums, we get a little bit of a burst of kind of low-mid energy. So let's deal with that. We're just going to use only the second band here between about 100 and 350. Cool. Now we don't need to do a ton there. Let's bring in the drums and bass again. Some EQ. Okay, so I'm going to boost some top end. Let's filter out some low end as well. You can filter pretty high here because, again, we don't really need a bunch of low end energy from these acoustics. Cool. Now I'm wondering if there's a bit too much of kind of a nasally mid-range around 1K. Let's check that out. Around 900. All right, that's sounding a little better. By the way, I'm not guessing. These are not random mix moves here. These EQ frequencies, these compression settings, these are all tried and true, and I've outlined them all on a mixing cheat sheet, which you can download for free at the link below, or go to mixcheatsheet.com. And it just outlines all of the go-to starting points for EQ and compression for not only guitars, but every other track in your mix as well. Kick, snare, toms, bass, vocals. So again, go and grab that for free at mixcheatsheet.com. Now, lastly, we're gonna do some compression here. And the reason we need this is if you listen, and you can even look at the waveform, right? It's kind of, the energy is constantly up and down between the strums. We want that to be a little more consistent, so we have the acoustics kind of really taking up a defined space in the mix and staying at that level rather than kind of jumping in and out. So I love the CLA3A plugin and the acoustic guitar setting here. And you'll see this on electrics as well, but right around 5 dB of gain reduction is the sweet spot. And I want to point out that I'm using the multi-mono version, not the stereo version of this plugin. And that basically just means it's the same as inserting 2 instances of this plugin, like one on the left channel, one on the right channel. So this compressor is not reacting to the sum of both the left and right. It's reacting to each side individually. See what a huge difference that makes? To me, this is way more important even than the EQ. For one thing, it's evening out, so it's bringing up the lower level strums, like I said, but it's also adding some energy and aggression to the strums. It makes it sound like he's strumming harder, or at least strumming a little more consistently on the strings. Cool, and actually, let's try a little bit of L1 limiting after that, just to catch the peaks and even it out a little more. Okay, let's bring in the electric rhythms. Cool, so these are panned out 100% left and right as well. And the tone is decent, it's just, it's quite dark, so we'll definitely brighten that up as well. Let's see what we need to do in terms of low end. And by the way, I've just inserted the SSL channel on both tracks here, and I have this group set up in Pro Tools so that whatever I do on one plugin, it's gonna do on the other one as well. So the plugin settings are grouped, just to make that clear. Lots of low end on these guitars. See, that's already better. Let's bring the CLA3A down here as well. I love it on electric guitars as well. And again, going for that 5 dB of gain reduction. Brings it a little more up front. And let's see if we can add a bit of brightness. Cool, I like that. Now let's bring in the lead. So that needs a huge lift of energy to cut through and stay on top of the mix. So let's start with EQ. We can get rid of a lot of low end here. And I'm basically just sweeping this high-pass filter to the point where it feels like it gets too thin, like it almost starts to sound filtered out. Then I back it up a little bit so that we still have a full-sounding tone, but without the low-end mud that we don't need. If I get there, it sounds a bit thin. That's pretty good there. Not surprisingly, it's around 200 hertz. It's typically where I'll end up filtering a lead guitar. And immediately when I heard this, I knew I needed to add around 1K, 1.5K. This is what I call the upfront frequency. Anything that you want to stand out upfront, forward in the mix, then you need to boost around 1K. Also need some top end energy. And let's compress that as well so it's nice and even across the entire time. By the way, when I load up this plugin, it's automatically loading with the electric guitar preset, so I don't want you to think that this is just the basic stock settings. I just pretty much only use this plugin for guitars, acoustic or electric, so I've just programmed it here so that as soon as I open the plugin, it's loading with that preset. That sounded pretty good. I'm curious what this would sound like if we add a little bit more drive to this. Let's try Decapitator. I'm almost wishing that the amp was pushed a little more at the source, but I think this does a good job of just adding a bit more. Let's make the acoustics a bit brighter on top, just so that the mid-range of them is pushed down a bit more. And you'll notice on the acoustics and on the rhythm electrics, on the top end I was boosting 8K, so a little higher up, just from that air and brightness to help them just sound more energetic in the mix. But on the lead, I boosted at 5K, which is going to provide a little more presence, especially on this SSL channel. That shelf boost, it definitely brings up a lot of frequencies below 5K as well. So it's not only adding that top end air, but it's also adding a lot of presence and energy. So having those things kind of in their own place, like by not boosting below 8K on the other guitars, I've left some space for this lead here. All right, we need to add some effects in here. I like to use a guitar doubler. So where's that send here? I gotta find it. There we go. So this is part of my mix template. I have the return over here. And this is the Waves Doubler 2 plugin, just with the factory default settings, and then a high-pass filter after that around 500, just because I want these. Basically, it's a coursey kind of effect that's duplicating the signal to the left and right. Little pitch shift, little course effect. Sounds like that. Now, I don't want a ton of that. I just want a little bit to spread out the guitar stereo a tiny bit. Cool, I like that. And then let's throw some delay as well. So there's my instrument delay send. And this is going to just a standard Pro Tools delay here, quarter note. But we have a groove setting here, which just adjusts the time a little bit left and right. So let me reset this. You'll see it's set to quarter note, and you can see it's 413 milliseconds. Now, if I groove a little bit negative and positive here, the delay time is switched. So what that's going to do here, I'll just demonstrate it for you. Let me solo the bridge lead again. So without the groove setting, this delay is going to be right up the middle. Okay, you can hear that the delay is mono. Now let's shift the time so it's a little bit off left and right. This is going to spread the delay out stereo. It's giving us a much wider sound on this guitar. Cool, now I'm just finding it's maybe a touch thin, so let's bring down some of the top end here, and then see if we can just turn it up instead. Maybe we need some escalator. This is a great mid-range thickening plugin here. Maybe those rhythms could be a bit brighter. Cool. So that's how I would mix the guitars for this song. And the way that you saw me EQ and compress these acoustics, these electrics, the lead, this is standard stuff, okay? The frequencies I'm typically looking to, the styles of compression, this is the same across different genres of mixes, different songs, different artists. Now, of course, the amount and the choices I make is dependent on the song itself, but how I'm thinking about it and my overall approach of how to achieve the sounds that I want is the same, and I've outlined it all on a mixing cheat sheet that you can download at mixcheatsheet.com. There's a link below in the description as well, but it's got all the frequencies and kind of go-to compressor settings that you just saw me use here. So if you enjoyed this, if you want to try applying these tips to your own mixes, go download that mix cheat sheet. And if you want to see me mix drums start to finish, check out this video next.